Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome back to On Texas Football, and welcome back to our way too early preview of the 2025 season for the Longhorns. And this week, we're talking about who I believe has become kind of their new rival in college football, especially in the SEC, the Georgia Bulldogs. They got to go to Athens to play Georgia. It is going to be a hell of a contest between those two teams. We'll talk about that and break it down. Before we do, we'll tell you our sponsor. Thank you to our friends at Von Lane. We appreciate Von Lane. VonLane.com. Use that code OTF25. You'll get $20 off your first ride with Von Lane. We'll tell you more about them coming up a little bit later on in this breakdown. But let's just talk about kind of the macro, the storyline, Jeff, of Texas versus Georgia. They're starting to get into a lot of recruiting battles off the field. We know last year met twice, met once in the regular season and in the SEC title game. I predicted they'd meet 4 to 5 times over the next 2 years. Maybe that does come to fruition, considering you can still see them again in the postseason. But the Longhorns will have to break one, if they're actually the longest win streak, current longest home game win streak in college football, if they want to leave Athens victorious. The Georgia Bulldogs right now, 31 straight home games they've won. The last loss dating back to October 2019, I believe, was the last time they lost a home game. I think that was South Carolina in double overtime. So it would not be an easy task to beat Georgia at home.
No, between the hedges, Sanford Stadium is a tough place to play, but there's a couple interesting storylines. Obviously, we've had the offseason back and forth between Sark and Kirby. It wasn't manufactured back and forth. Was it us making a big deal about nothing? I don't know, but there was back and forth there. You mentioned the recruiting battles. I think, too, for Texas to get to that next step where it wants to be as a program, you got to go through Georgia. The SEC goes through Georgia right now. And I think, too, Rod, the bigger thing for me is if you look at where Sark has Texas right now, they're kind of the next program that's knocking on the door. I think you go back to early in Kirby's tenure, that 2017 season where they lost the national championship game to Alabama, where they got walked off with the Tua to the Devontae Smith touchdown. From there, they were 13-2, 11-3, 12-2, 8-2 during the pandemic year. They're really knocking on the door. And then in 2021, they finally broke through and won back-to-back titles. Ryan Day was kind of the next coach that it felt like he's right there. Is he going to break through? And broke through last year. I think Sark is that coach now that's in that position. You've gotten to the semifinals 2 years in a row. You've been right there. You're on the cusp. Now it's a matter of, can you break through? So basically go back to kind of where Kirby was 2019, 2020. That's kind of where Sark is right now.
Does feel like that. Yes, I'm with you on that. The Longhorns are trending. And just throwing it out there, the Longhorns do have under Sark, do have a really good record of at least breaking some of these very long home game win streaks. Remember, Bama had one at the time when Texas went into Tuscaloosa. I believe Bama's was 21 straight home wins for them. And Michigan, actually, I believe, was at 23. Straight home, actually 23 game win streak at home for them. So the Longhorns have a little bit of experience in being able to go to some of these really, really hostile environments and have success. Let's talk about this Georgia offense, and then we'll get into the defense. And we got to talk about the specialists, by the way, too, because the preseason All-SEC team, no joke, that was the most impressive part of, if you're looking at the All-SEC representatives from Georgia, the fact that they essentially monopolized the special teams or specialists on the preseason All-SEC team. They had the first team kicker, punter, long snapper, I believe the returner, and all-purpose, and the place kicker. Like, that's unheard of. That's crazy. That's unbelievable. We'll get to that. Let's talk about the offense overall here. They'll be led by a new starting quarterback, and much like Texas with a new starting quarterback, a guy who's had some experience, but also will have a very young, inexperienced offensive line in front of him. But Gunnar Stockton is expected to be the starting quarterback for Georgia. Longhorn fans saw him when Carson Beck went down in the SEC title game. He was able to lead them to a victory, but didn't look very good up against, I believe, Notre Dame the next week for them. What are your thoughts about Gunnar Stockton? I do like his moxie. He's got some grit. He's tough and he's mobile, but I do think he has some trouble with some of the vertical pass concepts down the field.
Yeah, And he made a couple really bad decisions. Even if you go back to the SEC championship game, I mean, you had that interception late in the game where Georgia's trying to ice it, and he makes that errant throw that Janae Barron picks off. If Jalen Gilbo gets a piece of the receiver to that side of the field, Texas probably wins the national championship game on a walk-off pick six. So, or excuse me, wins the SEC championship on a walk-off pick six. So, it's not so much Gunnar Stockton, though, that I have a question mark with Georgia. It's just kind of where are they offensively right now? Because with Todd Monken, and granted they had some skill guys to be dynamic, and obviously Stetson Bennett was the right quarterback for where they wanted to go. But right now it just with Mike Bobo running the offense, it just seems like it was a lot of stops and starts and hits and misses last year. And I know, look, Trevor Etienne's health had a lot to do with that, right? When he was healthy, they were a different offense than when he was banged up. But last year, they got let down, I think, a lot with their skill position guys. It seemed like Aaron Smith was a guy that was like dropped several big potential catches in big games for them. And it just seemed they never quite found it. So I'm wondering, Rod, is it a personnel situation where, on the perimeter, they should be better this year? Or is it just that they're struggling right now to find an identity with Mike Bobo running the offense?
Could be the case. The one thing that worries me, if I'm a Georgia fan looking at the offense, is that every year under Bobo, at least every year for the last couple of years, ever since Monken left, they've gotten less explosive. You look at 20-plus yard gains, which is kind of how I judge explosivity right on offense. They were top. They were number one actually in 2022. They were top 5 in 2023 and dropped down to top 30. They were like 29th, I believe, or tied for 29th in 2024. And nothing wrong with that, by the way. That's totally respectable. By the way, Texas was number 1 in the country in 2024. Texas actually got the opposite trend. They were top 10 in 2023 in explosive plays, and they're number 1 in the country. We'll see if they – and that was with the offense having, some struggles, as we know, with the deep pass, things of that nature, with turnovers, and yet they still were really, really explosive. That's what worries me about Georgia. To your point about the athletes on the outside, a lot of it was drops, by the way. I mean, they had damn near 300 yards, passing yards lost to drops. And they had close to 50 drops on the season. I mean, they did not do Carson Beck any favors, and he didn't do them any favors. But that's what I worry about. So I'm with you. Maybe that just comes down to identity. Maybe that's just they don't know who they are. And one big injury, if you don't have an identity, a lot of your identity will be hinged on just one player. And I think they got to get back to having multiple guys that can be game changers for you. And that's why they went to the transfer portal. We talk about Gunnar Stockton, his weapons. They got Zachariah Branch from USC and A&M's Noah Thomas. Also another guy expected to be a big contributor for him. Zachariah Thomas is explosive, though. He's Pro Football Focus has him 95th and 93rd percentile in yards after the catch per reception and separation rate. So he's one of those guys. If you can give him the football in space, he can blow the game wide open. So that's the hope, I think, if they add some more juice to the offense.
Yeah, Dylan Bell's got some experience. London Humphreys was a guy that was a transfer portal guy for them a few years ago. Branch is a difference maker, though. Like, that's the one guy that if they can find a way to funnel the ball to him, and that's really, you look at where Georgia will, and look, I think at Texas we saw this, right, when Texas had Bijan Robinson. When all else fails, when your offense just can't get anything going, find your special player and just funnel production to them. Just put the ball in their hands and let them go try to make something happen. Like, go back to 2022. There were a couple games in that stretch, Rod, where Sark just kind of just threw out the game plan in the fourth quarter and said, you know what? Screw it. We're just going to get Bijan the ball and just get out of here with a win. That's kind of the security blanket that Georgia had with Brock Bowers. Like, Brock Bowers, even though he's a tight end, was that kind of special player. And I just think they didn't have that guy last year, at least that they could rely on. Like Trevor Etienne, you could argue whether he was that type of guy or not. He just wasn't healthy enough for them to be able to rely on him. So I think Nate Frazier gives them a really good presence at running back. But again, it goes back to me. What kind of offense do they want to be? Do they want to be a ground and pound and play action you? Do they want to be a little more spread oriented? Do they want to incorporate some quarterback run game? I think that's the biggest question for me, again, with Georgia's offense, is just what do they want to be and how do they go about doing it?
Yeah, I'm with you, and I do think that's where they go, right? I think you want to start with the run game because that's one of your strengths as well. We talked about how explosive Zachariah Branch can be, but if teams can just double team them and shade coverage or roll coverage situation, shade a safety of the top, it's not going to be as effective. But if teams have to respect the run game, you can get more favorable matchups on the outside. So I'm with you. Nate Frazier, really good freshman season last year, almost 700 yards rushing. That's a guy that should be aiming for 1,000 yards this year if he can stay healthy. And they got a transfer from Illinois, Josh McCray, big back, big guy, who averaged over 5 yards per carry, had a lot of production last season, especially really good in short yardage situations. So I want to say you start with the run game, and we'll get to the offensive line here in a second, and play action over the top. Play action for Gunnar Stockton, 83 pass grade.
Yeah.
On play action passes. That's when he's at his best because then you open up the passing windows for him, right? I think he opened up, and you can have some predetermined reads in there, simplify things for him a little bit. But when he can just let it loose and let it rip, and he knows exactly where he's going with football, oh, he's impressive. But if you're going to force him to have to go through progressions, hold on to the football a little bit, and then use touch and finesse in passing, I don't know if that's something that he is going to, I don't know if he's going to be successful in that kind of format. You want to let him just kind of grip it and rip it. You do that with play action concepts, with movement routes, where you can open up those big passing windows. Do that by sucking the linebackers up with deception, play action pass, RPO concepts, and then making sure that these safeties have to respect a Zachariah Branch, a Noah Thomas over the top, and then you can come in and work that intermediate area in the play action pass. So that's what I think they should be. I don't know if they will be, but I think that's where they should start because that's the strength of their quarterback.
The good thing is I think they've got, number one, some time to figure it out, and two, I think the thing that kind of can tie that identity together, they don't have a Brock Bowers at tight end, but I do like their tight end room. I mean, Oscar Delp had really big catches for them. I don't know. It felt like Oscar Delp, maybe one of the best games he played last year was that SEC championship game. I don't know. It just seemed like every time Georgia had a big third down where they needed to move the ball, they were looking toward Oscar Delp. I don't know if I'm in the majority or the minority of that. I just like Oscar Delp a lot as a player. And then Lawson Lucky had a couple of really big plays and some big moments for them. So the tight end room for them is rock solid.
I agree with you on that. That's one of the best, actually one of the best tight end rooms in the country. And it's got to be, right? Lucky had 21 receiving first down / touchdowns in 2024. That's highly productive. And Delp is kind of one of those freaks. You look at separation rate for tight ends. He's in a 99th percentile. So that should give some bigger windows for Gunnar Stockton to throw to. So I like the receiving core overall now. The tight ends and what they've done the transfer portal with the wide receiver position. Let's talk about O-line because for a lot of folks, this is the biggest concern for the Georgia Bulldogs. They did lose 4 starting offensive linemen. All those guys will be, having a chance to play in the league, but they lost a ton, just like Texas actually. But they do have guys with starting experience who are expected and projected to fill those voids. The 2 tackles, Monroe Freeling and Ernest Green. Both these guys are, pretty big, but I think Monroe Freeling, 23 starts, I believe that he's had overall. Ernest Green, 23 starts. Freeling is 22 games that he's played in. So he's played in a lot of games too. And they also have Micah Morris, the left guard, expected to be a starter as well. He's got 4 starts on his belt, and Mike Bobo's son, Drew Bobo, is he projected starting center. He's got 2 starts under his belt, 20 appearances and 20 games played. So they know at least what most of the O-line is going to look like. I think that right guard spot is kind of what's up for grabs still.
Yeah, and we'll see Michael Urini, the Coppers Cove product, so kind of a local kid from Texas. Nice. Texas offered him. He ended up committing to and signing with Georgia. Coppers Cove kid. So we'll see if he breaks. He seems to be in that mix rod for that right guard job.
Oh, nice. Okay, yeah. So they feel like kind of Texas does. Like they're probably not freaking out the fans who are close to this program because they've probably seen these guys play. And just like Trevor Gooseby for Texas, who's got a ton of experience out there, different players. Cole Hudson. They probably feel like these guys will be able to rise to the occasion. But if from what I've read, they may be more maulers though in the run game, which could help them early on with football.
I think a lot like Texas. I think
Yeah.
Texas is in a pretty similar situation. I think especially when, Ernest Green's their most experienced guy, kind of like Trevor Goosby at Texas, even though Green's probably got a little more experience than Goosby does, but you got a proven commodity at left tackle. And I think you've got some guys that have played, but this is their first time playing together on the interior. Just like we talk about with Texas, with Cole Hudson, with Neto, and with DJ Campbell. I feel like those three guys can give you a better, more consistent push in the run game than what you got previously on the offensive line. But kind of like Georgia, we'll see what it looks like. The difference is whereas Texas opens with Ohio State, Georgia's got Marshall and then Austin Peay. Tennessee's that third game, but they've got a couple of games where they can tweak some things and get things figured out.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. They averaged 7.7 yards per attempt last year. That was the lowest yards per attempt since 2019 for Georgia. And if you're looking at yards per carry, they were under 5 yards per carry too as a team. So the offense just didn't have, like you said, the consistency. And maybe it was going back to what your original point about the identity of the offense. That shouldn't be the issue this year. I do think they have, at least in the receiving core, a lot of weapons to build around, or at least to build their identity.
Yeah. The other thing too with Gunnar Stockton, Rod, I think the bar is pretty low for him in terms of taking care of the football, man. Because when they got into SEC play, even against Texas, Carson Beck turned the ball way too much.
They did.
Way too many turnovers, took way too many chances. As a matter of fact, I mean, if it's not for his turnovers, the score of the first Texas-Georgia game is more out of hand than it was. Because remember, they were driving in the red area, and Jade got his first pick, and then the one that got returned, and then the call was overturned, and then Texas ends up scoring the touchdown. It's a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter at that point, even though it didn't feel like a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter at that point, but still it was. So, yeah, I think that's another thing, too, is do they get a little more conservative with Gunnar Stockton until they figure out, okay, is he capable of taking care of the football?
I agree with that because they opened it up with Carson Beck because going into the season, he's a first-round pick. That was a projection. He's going to be able to put the cape on, put the team on his shoulders, and turns out that really wasn't the case last season. And by the way, didn't get any help from his receivers either because of all those drops. But I like what you said, though. That didn't really align with the Georgia recipe to win with Kirby Smart. Now, in the Todd Monken days, I think it matched up when they had all those weapons and Brock Bowers and everything. But I don't know if that aligned with this current. That was almost a miscalculation where they thought they were going to be really explosive so they could open it up and take a lot of chances. They're like, we actually turned the ball over. It was more high. We got more risk than reward out of that and put our defense in some very compromising positions oftentimes. So I think you're right about that. I think this year they might dial it back and go, no, we're going to win with our defense and we're going to have ball control and we're going to play a lot of complimentary football. That's what we're doing. And with our special teams, by the way, and our special teams is elite. Special teams and defense, baby. Offense, take a back seat.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about the special teams, right? Yeah. Because if you go back to the first meeting between Texas and Georgia last year, the guy that was most important, I think, look, when Texas was kind of self-destructing in the first half offensively and the defense did everything it could to keep the Longhorns in that game, I honestly thought the difference maker for Georgia, Rod, was Brett Thorson, the punter, because there was a couple times where he really flipped the field. And in that game, with as bad as your offense was, you put the defense on one too many short fields, and that necessarily wasn't the offense turning it over. Just Brett Thorson did a really good job of controlling the game by flipping the field. So, yeah, Georgia goes into the season with, I think, without question, the best special teams unit in the SEC.
And ironically, that guy tore his ACL versus Texas, didn't he?
In the championship game, yeah.
I'm not laughing at that injury. That sucks. But I'm just saying, like, that's the irony of what you're talking about. And it was a fake punt. Was it not a fake? It was a fake punt.
It was, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That kind of turned the tide in that game, no doubt about it. So I'm with you, brother. That's a great point about it. And yes, as we said earlier, Georgia is projected to have the best special teams in the SEC, which means they'll have one of the best special teams units in the country overall. And Brett Thorson, he's coming back from an ACL injury, but I haven't seen or read anything that says he's going to have any setbacks. So he's expected, but they will have a sophomore, I think, Drew Miller, who's supposed to be really good too, in case he can't go right away. And then Peyton, is it Woodring?
Woodring, yeah.
The kicker, he's a third-year guy, so he's been around there forever. 42 or 48 on field goals in his career. So he's a stud. They got a great return game, and they'll be have enough athletes where they can have a good block game. If they want to go punt block, they'll be able to have a good punt block unit too. So I'm with you. I think that's how they're gonna win, man. I think offense is like, let's just be conservative. All right, now we're not trying to take too many chances until we can learn if Gunnar Stockton can handle that. And if he can, great. But until then, we're going to be conservative, and we're going to win games with defense, special teams, field position, hidden yardage, boom, in the return game, which they can do.
We will know from a Texas standpoint, we will know by this game what kind of weapon Jack Bowmeister is in the punt game. And if he's got the kind of hang time and you got the kind of coverage team where you can deal with Zechariah Branch, then you can go test your mettle against them. But if there's even a shred of doubt that you can handle it, kick away from that dude, because he can change the game and take one back. And all of a sudden you're in a hole because you gave up a score in the third phase.
Yeah. Oh, man, that could be in a game like that with Texas and Georgia. A special team score just blows it wide open. Any big play on special teams, but then a score like that, I think would blow it wide open.
Even last year, I think about it, like last year for Texas, it wasn't the play that they made in that first game. That big kickoff return Matthew Golden had was like, all right, they can find themselves here. It got called back because of a penalty.
Brutal. That was brutal. I remember that one too. Oh, yeah. All right. So special teams for Georgia. That's one of those things where Georgia is probably going to have the edge on everybody they play this year. That's how good Georgia special teams is expected to be. I really think so. Yeah. I'm with you on that. But let's talk about the Georgia defense, which, I mean, it's Kirby Smart's defense. So there's no doubt the unit's going to be impressive. They lost a lot. They lost a ton. They lost 2 edges to the NFL. They lost a first round safety to the NFL. Malachi Starks is one of the better safeties in college football. They do bring back another stud, KJ Bolden. I guess we can kind of start there. They do bring back another stud, KJ Bolden. He was a freshman last year. And, I mean, guy's supposed to be one of the best safeties in the country. They know that already.
Shocker, Kirby Smart's got a stable full of NFL caliber DBs just ready to step up.
Yeah, and then CJ Allen's kind of the other. If you're talking about these guys who are already proven commodities, also in the secondary, let me not forget about the cornerbacks too. Both of those guys, good players who are coming back, caused some havoc for Texas too. But CJ Allen is considered one of the best linebackers in college football. He's a really good player. Dalen Everett is the corner last year that wreaked havoc on Texas. Another corner, Daniel Harris, returns for them too. So they got some foundational pieces to build around pretty much at every level. And he's stockpiling studs and 5 stars forever. So any guys you're basically looking at on the front 7, and you just said in the secondary too, who are supposed to be up and coming guys and replacing some of these starters and replacing the guys who went to the NFL, most of them, if not all of them, are blue chip 5-star guys. Like, that's it.
Yeah, guys like Christian Miller, Jordan Hall, like some of those guys have kind of waited their turn a little bit. They had to wait a couple of years, but now they're ready to step up. Look, I'll just say this out front. I'm glad that I can watch Texas line up against Georgia, and I don't have to see Mykel Williams or Jalen Walker on the other side of the line of scrimmage from the Texas offense this year, because Mykel Williams was dinged up most of the year, Rod, and it just so happened that like the games where he was the healthiest were the Texas games. And Jalen Walker, I think the 2 best games he played last year were against Texas.
I don't think it's a coincidence. I think it's it's a game. It's an easy game to get pumped up for, and they tell you, "Hey, damn it! Every NFL team, every NFL scout is at this game, right? Try to watch."
You're going on the road to play the number 1 team in the country, and then the next time you play them is in your backyard in Atlanta for the SEC championship.
Come on, man. Yeah, that's how you start a rivalry. All right, with the SEC rival. But you brought up Christian Miller. I should have brought him up as well. He was one of the other foundational pieces that returned for them, and he's a stud. I believe Pro Football Focus had him as one of the top interior defensive linemen in the country. I believe he was one of the only players that played 300+ snaps on the defensive line for them. So he actually got a lot of play last year. There are some other guys expected to step up. Jonah Ajonye is a guy that I read a lot about. Elijah Griffin is another guy that got a lot of pub in the offseason. Jordan Hall. Isaiah Gibson, I believe, is another name. So there are a ton of studs that are expected, unproven commodities. They're expected to fill any voids that the defensive front for Georgia may have. And like I said, most of these guys are 5-star guys who, like you said, have waited their turn, and they don't do that other places in the country. But because Georgia can show you the blueprint to turn you into an NFL player, like they've done so many other players before them, Kirby Smart, people trust in Kirby as well they should. So.
Yeah, and did we ever get it figured out, Rod, if Will Muschamp is for sure back at Georgia?
I heard he was out for this season. I read that he was not coaching Georgia this season, but I could be wrong about that. That's
okay.
what
Kirby is. I know Kirby said at SECB today is that he's still with us.
Okay, so maybe whatever
that means. But look, as long as, and I don't know how involved he's going to be, but man, anytime Will Muschamp is involved with putting together even one iota of your defensive game plan, I'll tip my cap to you, and I'll give you a slight edge.
Yeah, the report I read was before SEC Media Days. So if he said SEC Media Days, they're still with him, then that's the most recent thing. So the one I read was from early July. So,
which, by the way, anybody that doesn't know, Will Muschamp is my football spirit animal. So I have, in my opinion, and there've been I've seen some great Texas defensive coordinators in my lifetime. I don't think anybody was better than Will Muschamp. And I wasn't here for Mike Campbell or the Leon Fuller, but just in my time on this earth, I don't think there's been a Texas defensive coordinator better than Will Muschamp.
Very few as passionate about the point they're trying to emphasize than Will Muschamp. I will throw this out there though, because I do think this is going to be by far the most compelling matchup, if you will. Georgia's defense versus the Texas offense, Sark versus Kirby. I know obviously it's Glenn Schumann's defense, but it's Kirby. Obviously, it's Kirby's system. And last year, man, they definitely won. I would say Georgia won the chess match on that side of the ball. They broke tendency. They did a lot to break tendency. Their blitz rate usually was hovering around 48% based on Pro Football Focus numbers. Against Texas, that blitz rate actually dropped. A lot more simulated pressures, a lot more stunts and twists. They disguised their coverages a lot more versus Texas. Disguised their coverages close to 40% of the time. Usually they were around 25% of the time disguising their coverages. Use a lot of, as we know, a lot of movement up front. A lot of shifts on the defensive line, on defensive front to try to confuse that Texas offensive line. And, I mean, it all worked pretty much. I'll say this about Sark. Sark started to figure some things out. In that first matchup against Georgia, he had one target to motion in the first half against Georgia. And in the second half, he had 5. And in that second game, he had 13. And they went 10 of 13 in that game, 118 yards, 5 first downs, 2 explosive plays against Georgia, targeting players who were in motion prior to the snap. At the time, what's that? Remember those Matthew Golden deep balls? He was in motion, cheat motion. He found a hack within the Georgia defense. Now, you probably won't have it again because Kirby Smart is probably going to fix it. I assumed he would have fixed it, but he didn't fix it from the first game to the second game. Because Sark really did exploit it in the second matchup. Something else that Sark found in that second matchup, and I think this will work really well in this particular matchup in 2025. Kirby's defense is really aggressive. They're fast flow, and they're well-trained. They got really good eye discipline. That's bad usually for offenses, but it can be really good too if you're using false keys and if you're using double moves. And a lot of that worked against Georgia. Remember the 22-yard whip route by DeAndre Moore. Why? Because when they see a cut, they go. They're downhill. They're screaming to the football. You can use their aggression against them. And that's what I think Sark can do. Use these aggression beaters. They had the hitch and go. You got 32-yard reception or hitch and go. You got, remember that bluff slant touchdown by DeAndre Moore. You got that, right? Because when they see screen, they go to screen. Bluff slant work perfect for them. That little stalk slant. So those, I think you got to put in more of those double moves, more of those aggression beaters against Georgia. And not the screen game because they snuff out screens. It can't be screen oriented. It's got to be kind of vertical aggression beaters and double moves down the field of some kind. You need a little bit of time to get it done, but they pay off big, huge dividends in those first couple of matchups. So
yeah,
things out.
The big thing too, Rod, you just got to try to eliminate the negative plays. And I'm not just talking about the turnovers. Sacks count towards your rushing yardage total, yes, but the 2 games against Georgia last year, you were 58 rushing attempts for 60 yards. And even if you take out the sacks, the sack adjusted rushing yards, it's still not pretty. But in those 2 games against Georgia, you gave up 13 sacks and 25 tackles for loss. Let me say that again. In the 2 games against Georgia, you gave up 13 sacks and 25 TFLs in 2 games. Now, I know Georgia had really good personnel. I refuse to believe that the gap between Texas and Georgia was that big. Rod, I don't want to give you PTSD, but looking at some of the numbers from these 2 games last year, it reminds me of looking at some of the numbers from those early 2000s Texas OU games where this sample compared to the rest of the body of work makes no sense. So it's whereas Mac Brown had a Bob Stoops problem, well, I think we can officially say Sark has a Kirby Smart problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%. And honestly, what ended up giving Texas the advantage, they didn't figure it out. It wasn't that he figured it out scheme-wise. He just got an elite quarterback, a transcendent quarterback that was able to overcome any of those impediments and obstacles, right? Ultimately, it's just VY is just too damn good. And by the way, Chris Sims was pretty damn good. NFL quarterback, best player in the country being recruited. He wasn't no scrub. But we couldn't get over the hump that way. And ultimately, you need a quarterback that's going to make you right, even when you're wrong. And Sark was wrong a lot against Kirby Smart. Arch may make him right. Who had the longest rush against Georgia for Texas? Arch.
That would be one Arch Manning, yeah.
He had the longest rush in that little bit of first game. He had that 20-something yard scamper when they spread him out. So I feel like history may repeat itself. That's a great example of that. It may just be Arch that figures it out for Sark, and Kirby is one of those guys that kind of has Sark's number a little bit here. We shall see. We shall see about that. All right, let's thank our sponsor, our friends over at Von Lane before we end this program. Thank you to Von Lane. We appreciate them very much for sponsoring our way too early preview and breakdown. You've got to get to Houston and Dallas, or Fort Worth, San Antonio, Austin, traveling to the major cities in the great state of Texas. And like always, it's a bit of a toss-up, right? Do you deal with the airport chaos and stress and hope your flight isn't delayed, or do you brace yourself for hours behind the wheel, battling traffic and road rage and dealing with an entire day of lost productivity? Well, now there's a third option, and it's the best option. It's Von Lane. You arrive at a luxury hotel terminal, no TSA lines, no long-term parking lots, just a seamless boarding experience that takes minutes, not hours. You settle into a plush leather seat, one of just 22 oversized first-class seats with a 140-degree recline leg rest and a cabin attendant serving complimentary snacks, beverages, and on select trips, a full meal if you need. And if you'd like to relax, well, it's simple. Just lean back and enjoy the ride. But if you want to stay productive, there's high-speed Wi-Fi and power at every seat. Fall travel is booking fast, so right now it's the perfect time to reserve your spot for October trips to Texas versus OU, F1 and ACL in Austin, or college football weekends in Nashville, Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. Von Lane connects Austin, Dallas, Houston, Fort Worth, San Antonio, Nashville, Atlanta, Memphis, and now Knoxville, and the Woodlands, by the way, and Plano as well. Visit vonlane.com. That's Von Lane, VONLANE.com. Use the code OTF25 to save $20 off your first ride with Von Lane. Von Lane, elevated regional bus transportation. Thank you very much to Von Lane for sponsoring our way too early preview and breakdown. Thank you as well, Jeff. We appreciate all of your expertise. Great job as always. Thank you to Matthew behind the scenes, twisting and tweaking the dials. He's the real MVP. And thanks to each and every one of you for watching and for listening. And for Jeff and for Matthew and for our friends over at Von Lane, I'm lifetime Longhorn Rod Babers. Until next time, hook 'em horns.